Good morning, everyone. This particular webinar on ICAlert, I'm going to rattle through a whole series of things. The presentation, as Dominic said, has been recorded and also provide you or can provide you with a link to the presentation as well. Just perhaps a bit of information to start with, a bit of an introduction, or by way of introduction. My name is David Wright. I'm Director of the UK Safe Internet Centre at Southwest Grid. UK Centre is a National Awareness Centre when it comes to online safety. It's a partnership of 3 charities, and I come specifically from Southwest Grid for Learning, where we're responsible for range of things, not only operating the national helpline supporting the children's workforce around online safety, but also producing resources and services particularly targeted at schools and other agencies. We also write standards for the government. I'll come on to that in a moment. We support the school inspectorate, particularly with training for HMI across the UK, Ofsted, Estin, and others, as well as helping contribute towards their standards too. Contact details are there too. So this particular webinar, I'm just going to really rattle through a whole series of things, and as Dominic said, there will be some opportunity for questions at the end. I'm going to mention some of the statutory guidance that schools particularly are obliged to follow, recent ones as well. We're going to just run through and highlight some of the performance of schools from a UK perspective when it comes to online safety, but then look at particular illegal online content, online material, and introduce ICAlert, the new service that has been created, which I'll come on to at the end. So in terms of statutory obligations around online safety, over the course of the last 3 years, we've seen some significant change. There's ostensibly 2 particular statutory obligations or documents that are relevant to schools in this context. One which Dominic's mentioned already, so keeping children safe in education. This introduced new obligations to schools in September 2016 for schools in England, and particularly introduced the requirement, the expectation to provide appropriate levels of monitoring, well actually it was filtering and monitoring. And in context of that, one of the things that we did as the UK Centre was to publish some definitions around what we think constitutes appropriate filtering and monitoring. The other statutory obligation is around Prevent. This is for schools in England and Wales. They have an obligation to implement strict IT policies, which is what the document terms, and within that, it's included by establishing appropriate levels of filtering. And clearly, that's all around trying to block access to, in this context, content that was likely to radicalise children, which is what those obligations do. The third document down there at the bottom is Ofsted's guidance for inspectors when inspecting safeguarding. And online safety plays a really important part in that as well. As you can see from that documentation, inspectors will routinely ask around online safety when they go into a school inspection, but also it's around the expectation that adults and school leaders understand the risks posed to children. So a combination of different things. We've seen some significant change over the course of the last 3 years, particularly for schools in England. So in terms of school performance, one of the things that we've provided actually for the last 8 years is something called 360-degree Safe, used by some over 11,000 schools now across the UK. Self-review tool, and what it does for us is it discloses where schools are at. So we know that staff training is a particular weakness. One of the things we concluded in 2016 is that 1 in 3 schools aren't compliant when it comes to data protection. So there's a link through to that document. On the right-hand side, there is an infographic that we published in July 2015 with Ofsted. We undertook, or injected a series of questions into all HMI-led inspections during March 2015, particularly around online safety, and those are the sort of the headline conclusions that we drew from the results of that particular survey. Again, kind of links on that particular page. So there's this question about well, what is illegal online content? And in this particular context, that comes down to essentially two things. So one is online child abuse content, or the misnamed child pornography. Now there's lots of definitions around that, and the Internet Watch Foundation are the UK agency tasked with managing child abuse images online. They are categorised in terms of the content on an ABC category, where so A is essentially nudity of children, through to extreme images, which is classified as category C. So this is a well-defined area, and again, there's been much political focus in this area since 2013. And the tragic murders of April Jones and Tia Sharp by Mark Bridget and Stuart Hazel, in both cases, child abuse images were cited as fueling those murders, and lots has fallen out as a consequence of that. Not least blocking a particular site, additional powers for the Internet Watch Foundation. The other side of illegal content is extremist material, or is unlawful terrorist material. Now, this is something that a unit within the Met Police manages, CTIRU, the Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit, part of SO15, the Counter-Terrorism Unit. They, in the same way that IWF maintain a list and manage and remove content, they do the same thing, but for unlawful terrorist content. So they too produce say URL lists that many ISPs and filtering providers integrate to. Both of those are very relevant when we get on to talk about, particularly about ICAlert. So just on the prevalence, if you like, this is just an infographic from IWF's annual report from last year, as you can see. So it identifies a whole series of different aspects. Most notably, the big change was the rise of where child abuse content is actually hosted. So predominantly now it's in the Netherlands. It was historically, it's always been within North America. So the age of children, as you can see there as well, the age of the child depicted within those illegal images as well. So a significant rise in 11 to 15-year-olds, as you can see there. So that particular age group being targeted, and as well some of the number of reports that IWF actually manage and actively taking down content. From our perspective, we actually came to this from a project. Southwest Grid is actually the ISP for the majority of schools in the Southwest. That's why the charity was set up in 2000. And still does connect the majority of the 2,500 schools. In 2003, we were monitoring the network to understand the education impact, and it was during the summer of 2004 that this top 100 websites that the entire region visited. When normal traffic ebbed away during holiday periods, other traffic floated up. So one week during August 2004, a porn site appeared in the top 100 websites. And on closer investigation, what had happened was a network manager had come into the school, turned the filtering off, downloaded a considerable quantity of pornography, and then reinstated the filters. And one of the things that it occurred to us at that particular point was we could perhaps use the same engine to identify if anyone's attempting to access to illegal content, which is evidently what you may well more predominantly from the school perspective, want to know. And over the course of the next 2 years, instigated that process. So it's under a Home Office regulated pilot project. It started in 2006, and every night we run a query against all web pages accessed by any school, and then look for anyone attempting to access a page containing illegal content. And now, ordinarily, the content that they would have received would have been just a filter page. But again, the pretext is that in a school, you might want to know if someone's searching for it. And over that 10-year period, now 11-year period, we've identified 12, we've had 12 such hits. So it's about a 1 in 40-year chance of it happening. So of these 12 hits, 11 of them were members of staff. And so one wasn't progressed in the public interest. But a combination of teachers as well as facility staff, which were the perpetrators, which those alerts are the hits actually then are managed. We have two seconded police officers within the team, specialist police officers. So one is from Avon and Somerset's Internet Child Abuse Team and has been on secondment to us since 2006. And he, in these cases, managed those alerts with the local specialist police unit. It was, though, it was often it's met with shock around this particular sort of issue, and that we see lots of headlines as well, don't we, around teachers prosecuted or found with child abuse content. It always makes headlines. But in actual fact, there's little surprise in why that's the case. So this is just some research that Joe Sullivan, who was at CEOP, the National Crime Agency, as well as Lucy Faithfull, concluded around if those people with a predilection with sex with children knew by the age of 21, and 56% of them actually geared their career accordingly, which is well why we see so many, or a higher proportion perhaps of those working with children because of exactly that. I just want to point out as well, though, that we're not accusing all teachers that they're paedophiles. Clearly we are not. But it's something that is particularly important, and schools need to be very well aware. Again, number of research and data that backs that conclusion up. So, sort of turning to ICAlert, it was in 2012 that someone pointed out, when we were talking about the proactive monitoring and that we do with Southwest schools, they pointed out two things. So one was, well, clearly you only connect Southwest schools, and that's obviously correct. And secondly, someone said, well, if a school's got a local filter unit, then that filter unit would mask the request. So obviously the local network level filter would indeed just apply a filter page, and so the attempt would actually not reach our network. And so both those things led us to think, well, yeah, that's really true. It's not. What if we created a device that sat on a network that would essentially do this function, this alerting function, then that would actually help in both those cases. So it clearly would be available to any school, and also even if they've got a local filter. And so that is when ICAlert was born. So ICAlert is illegal content alerting. That's what the IC stands for. It's a partnership between, as you can see at the top there, so Plymouth University, Internet Watch Foundation, CTRU, and obviously Exertis. Plymouth University, the School of Computing, were the ones responsible for the technical, the architecture, and the system creation and development. They were given a number of design principles. So one was it's low cost. that cost should not be a barrier to schools accessing this, and that from our charitable perspective is very important to us. Another one was that it had to have no software or no installation. It is aimed at all schools, and so it is a out-the-box, plug-into network, no further action required, no software to install. And then the third one was around security. Given that the unit will contain, by definition, illegal URLs, security has to be absolute. And so that is what they designed. It is, as you can see from the image there, it's a rack-mounted unit. It plugs directly into either the filter, any local filter, or indeed the network or the router. Forgive me. And is a fire or install and forget. Once it's unboxed, plug it into that position, turn it on, and leave it. It requires nothing more than that. What it will do is it will watch all unencrypted traffic coming by, requests coming by on their way as they exit the network, and in real time or near real time will compare those against both the IWF list as well as the CTIOU list. If the unit detects a hit, what it will do is it will alert the team at South West Grid, so the specialist police officers, who will go and liaise with the local agencies, particularly either law enforcement or social care, and then make contact with the school. It's done in that particular way because clearly we don't know who it is that's actually requesting this particular or attempting to access this particular content. And so once they're satisfied that the person doing it is not the person, usually the head teacher or indeed the safeguarding lead, they'll then go and make contact and have a conversation and work with the school through the process. That's why it's a managed unit rather than the alert just going off to the school. So then I'll see a question, well, how does the school know it's actually working? There's an online dashboard into their device, which will just clearly show to them a range of different bits of data. So in this particular context, you can see a big green, yes, everything is okay, is online and is operating as you'd expect. It provides some data as well around the number of URLs it processes, or it's processed, the CPU utilization, temperature, and network throughput. I should add as well, in terms of ICAlert unit as it stands today, that the ports are limited to 100 meg, so it will support up to 100 meg internet connections. There are now plans to increase that to support gigabit or up to gigabit internet connections, but for the most part, most schools will have less than 100 meg connection. So that their online dashboard is how they will indeed ensure or satisfy themselves that it's all operating as they might expect. And then, should any alert actually occur, then the specialist team at South West Grid will then work with local agencies if they do have an alert to make contact with the school. So the purpose is entirely this. So it's entirely just to keep, to identify a particular threat to a child, to help the school in discharging one of its responsibilities around providing appropriate monitoring, for the benefit, for the safety of the children with whom they have clearly a statutory duty to protect whilst in their care. That is our sole aim in this, and ICAlert definitely will play a part in that from a national perspective. I hope that has been a massive whistle-stop tour in terms of what ICAlert actually is. We are just massively excited by the prospect of what it can do, both in terms of identifying threats to children around child abuse, as well as terrorist or indeed extremist content, especially given some of the tragic headlines of the last couple of weeks. We know what we are particularly good at as a charity, as an organisation, but it's through you guys around providing this particular unit and service to a school. It's why we need you in order to do that.